All right. Keegan Smith,
Thanks for having me.
how's it going?
I'm really good, thanks, man. Yeah, it's
That's
nice
good.
to finally speak. And I was just checking out your Instagram this morning, watching your mobility stuff yesterday. It's hectic. You've taken that stuff to another level.
I work pretty hard on it, man. But I mean, same for you. I wake up every morning, and our time zones are so different. I know I'm waking up, and you're in bed pretty much, right? Or you're heading that way. So I end up like checking through and listening to your stuff and watching you train as I'm going into work. And I'm listening to you, and it just it gets me amped up for the morning. So it's been really cool.
Good to hear.
Thanks for taking the time to sit down with me. I
No,
really appreciate that. I know you're busy and there's a lot going on right now. So I know it's not easy just set aside a bit of time to just chat shop. So I really appreciate that, man.
no, it's my pleasure. And yeah, this is the stuff that I live for. This is what I love. So it's always good to have the opportunity to share some ideas, and hopefully there'll be some things here that people who tune in will get some value from. But it's always good to make this connection with you as well. Like that's part of the joy of the podcast world is the connection you make between presenter and guest.
I've been writing out things that I wanted to talk to you about, and in the last 2 months, I've really immersed myself into your world and everything that you're about. So my oldest guy had hockey just after work. I took him over there, and I was sitting in the rink, and I'm writing out all these things that I wanted to talk to you about, and I'm looking, and I'm just like, I got to narrow some of this down, man, because the last couple of months has been it's been really cool entering your world and seeing what you're all about, and I have so many questions, and I'm excited because I live for that world too, and it's really cool to find that connection and that community. But the first question I wanted to ask you today is, what are you going to train today, if you are training? Just kind of wondering what's on the plan for today.
Good question. Yeah, I mean every day's a training day. Is the intention. Occasionally it doesn't happen based on other commitments, etc. But yeah, today there's definitely going to be juggling that's on at the moment. I hit a personal best yesterday on the 5-ball, which has taken months, probably like 3 months or so since I was going well with that. Like it's really like something that's a bit of a grind to get to be besting because it's more of a fine skill, and yeah, those high end skills the PBs don't come quite as easily, especially if you let it decay a little bit. So that'll definitely be on the cards again today. I'm enjoying that, feeling relatively comfortable, and the 100 throws of 5-ball juggle, it's probably been a goal for more than 2 years now.
Wow.
So that'll be nice. And that may be the day, today may be the day for that. My focus for September, so we're doing this sprint September. The idea is that occasionally you just need to really nail down, focus on something and make a big improvement. And I've had massive results with this in different areas of my life. The house that we actually live in at the moment, the farm, which we're about to move on from to go and see the world. But that actually happened in this sprint scenario where I set myself 30 days to find a place for my family to be. When my second child came along, we sort of decided we didn't want to move from rental to rental. And that came about in this scenario as well. So for the 30-day sprint that I have coming up, it's about the back squat. I want to back squat 165 plus. Nice. I back squatted 160 earlier this year, which was a personal best. But I kind of had those chicken legs, and they never. I haven't full squatted, ass to grass, double body weight. So that's something that needs to happen. So that's kind of the intention for September. You can't guarantee it just with the intention, but even though it's not September yet, that's still on the cards for today. So yeah, that's two things that'll definitely be in there.
I started my sprint September, part of the community, the Real Movement community, and I've been really trying to just, in a sense, act on things and then kind of start attacking. And it was funny because we were talking about it in the Real Movement community about Sprint September, and everyone was listing their goals. And I said, memorize 25 quotes. And I was like, yeah. And then you commented on it and said, oh, good stuff. Have you picked them? And I was like, oh yeah, shit, I gotta pick the quotes. So I started actually listing them out, and I got to 16 today, and I was like, wow, this is actually going to be a lot of quotes to memorize in a month. But it's a cool concept. I really like that, isolating a goal or a focus point, and I like how it doesn't have to be physical either, and start thinking about, how can I really attack that goal specifically over 30 days, right? Like really it's just a month.
Yep.
So yeah, that is a very cool concept. So would you say with the squatting challenge, are you going to take like a unique approach to that and squat more, maybe Boris Chico style?
I mean the squat every day thing is something, the Matt Perryman book. I don't know if you've read that one.
No, I read that
I'm
one.
a fan of John Bros as well.
Bros. I did do the Bros method once.
Yeah, so I went to one of his courses in 2013 when it was still in the old Poliquin Institute and stuff, and late 2012. And I've sort of always been intrigued by the results that he gets, and people will throw stones as people tend to do, but he's got 12-year-old kids and middle-aged women and stuff that have really big lifts as well. So some of the stones that are thrown at him because of Pat Mendez and such, like there's definitely something to the frequency, and because it's a metaphysical thing as well, right? Like it has to be a mental journey as well as a physical journey. Like it's not just about getting that number, it's about like the process that you go through for it. So the everyday principle is definitely in there. The plan that I have is like front squat, back squat, and then like more of a medley kind of overhead plus front squat, back squat combination kind of thing. So the focus on different days with that, and then also using some accommodating resistance, and then making sure the split squat stays in there as well, because I think that's a problem that I've had in the past. Like my tendency isn't to underdo intensity or underdo effort. It's breaking down from trying to go too hard. So I have become a little bit more patient. I'm 36 now, as we were talking about before the podcast. I'm finding a little bit more patience, and I don't tend to want to annihilate myself quite to the degree that I have had the tendency to do in the past. So I think I can hang in there quite nicely with that. Just get to a solid, 1, 3, or 5 each day on those things is kind of the plan. Just really one sort of moderately challenging set most days is pretty much the plan. I've done that before. I've used the easy strength and even easier strength protocols, which Dan John and Pavel Tsatsouline.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
Popularized. So they that stuff's a lot of fun, and I've had really, really good results with that in the past. So I'm working along those lines, and fairly confident that something good will happen. The wild card is I have an event in Melbourne. Probably need to spend some time in Sydney, and we're kind of packing up to leave the house and such as well. So I'm not sure if there's going to be a point where it's going to be more challenging to access a barbell and other challenges getting in the way, but that's life as well. Like never, people say, I'll do it later. Like you won't do it later, like the easy time doesn't come. Life gets busier, and you just got to keep moving, be smart, be compassionate with yourself, but keep moving, so that's the plan.
Nice. So it's just squat focused, and then you're going to have some accessory work in there as well today.
Yeah, like I still do everything else, it's just one piece, but it's like just because you do the sprints at it doesn't mean you don't have to brush your teeth and you don't have to pay the bills and you don't have to go to work. You know what I mean? Like, you still got to get everything else done. So with your training as well, you got to get everything else done with your business, with your family. It's just like there's one clear intention of this thing I will definitely execute, and by giving yourself that power of knowing you can execute that one thing, you kind of give yourself the power that you can execute anything, not everything, but anything. If you choose this, I want to be really, really good at this, and you've had that experience for a month. Well, what if you did it for a year? What if you did it for the next 10 years? And that sort of introduces you to the philosophy and the way of living that leads to excellence, and I think a lot of ask, because it is easy to get scattered across lots of different endeavors, and you have to do that to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
But you still got to have those few things that you're world class at. You got to be world class at 2 or 3 things. If you can get to be world class at 2 or 3 things, then you can change the world, and you can open up a big future for yourself. So I would say you've got that with your mobility, and then I don't know what else. We don't know each other that well just yet, but I'm looking forward to doing one of our planning sessions and look at what we can do to pair that up with some other other capacities, other things that you're excited about, to get you on the path that you want to go on. Like, that's what real movement is about. Like, you're just kind of looking at the training system and the philosophy inside the level 1 at the moment. But the other side, and why it used to be called Real Movement Project, is because it's about you achieving your project. So, like, whatever your biggest project you can imagine for yourself, like, let's get that done. That's kind of the thing. And I don't really know yours yet, so I'm looking forward to going to that side with you. But engaging with the method and just believing in your own ability to learn. A lot of people doubt their memory, right? Everyone has a perfect memory, something that Bob Proctor says. It's just weak. So it just needs to be trained in the same way that we do it with our strength work. And my experience is that is true. I've memorized a deck of cards. I've memorized credit card numbers. But then if I leave that stuff, it fades away as well. You know what I mean? So I memorize the numbers 1 to 100 and lots of quotes. But I know it's highly trainable, just like, your back squat. You don't squat for a year and you don't train your legs. Like, it's not going to be the same when you go back to it. So
for sure.
I think it's going to be a fun experience with the quotes. And I think it is a good thing to fill your brain with stuff that you want it to be filled with.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's cool to step outside of your normal scope and do something a bit different too, right? So that's kind of what my approach to it was. Like, okay, well, what's something I haven't really attacked, and just seeing that aspect of, like, quotes and stuff, memorizing, or just like paraphrases and things like that. I was like, okay, well, I haven't really attacked that yet, so it'd be cool to kind of jump in and take a look there. But yeah, let's get right on the Real Movement Project. And about 6 months ago, I was in a bad spot, and I was trying to get myself back into the swing of things. And I started lifting again. Like, I had spent some time in gymnastics and away from the older years of lifting, but I started lifting again and trying to fuel that fire to get back into things and kind of get myself fired up. And along the way, Jeffrey, Flexible, starts sending me your stuff every day. Look at Keegan. Keegan? Check out Keegan. And I'm going over to your account, and you're lifting, you're doing handstands, you're juggling, all these things that I've kind of played with and done, and you're doing it all in one. And it just really connected with me and what I wanted to get involved with. And then the more I start following you and the Real Movement Project, the more I start seeing what it is really about, which is what you just said. And it's like, mentoring you to meet your goals and to achieve what you want to achieve and to act. And I really needed that at that time. And I've been really diving into it now, following the online university mentoring program. It's been great. I've only been on there for just under a month. But can you just discuss what the Real Movement Project is a little bit, maybe just like the origins and, the how? Just give us a little breakdown of that.
Cool. Yeah. No, I appreciate everything that you're sharing there as well, man. Like, that's what it's designed for, like, there's a lot of people going through tough spots, and the highest rates of people who decide that they can't go on is in our kind of demographic. Like, guys get to an end point and it's just like there's too much pressure here, whether it's finances and family and just self-worth, whatever it goes on. And that's that's part of why this stuff was created. Like, I battled with that through my teens, which is probably the other challenging time. And then our time in life is also the time that statistically seems to be the most challenging mentally, and especially among the male demographic. So, like, how are we meant to be living? Like, that's the question. Like, what does a good life look like, and how do we create that? Like, that's really what I've been doing. And it's two things that come together. Like I was working in rugby league. I was working with the best team in Australia. Rugby league is the sport that I know best. So working in Australia with the best team, like that's pretty much the best job in world strength and conditioning that I could have had. Like I wouldn't have wanted to go to a basketball team or an NFL team or a Premier League soccer team in preference, because it's a strength dominant sport. I know the sport and I know that you get to play a big role. It's not like, I know that some of the NFL roles and such, like you're in, but you're not really in. Like the guys have their own guys and there's a lot of politics. And so I was in a good environment. We were in a winning team. Like we went from underdogs to winning everything. And I decided to leave that to do this, and it was like, what, how can I surround myself with more people that are going to another level? Because I really believe in that, you're the product of the 5 people you spend the most time with, etc. And I decided that guys like Charles Poliquin, Bruce Lipton, Joe Dispenza, Paul Chek, Rob Wolf, if I pulled out 5, like they were probably my 5. Bob Proctor's probably one of the other ones, but like they were the guys I was spending most time with when I was in France, apart from the rugby team that I worked with. But I was like just immersing myself in their stuff because I wanted to be someone who I wasn't. I wanted to make a big change in myself while I was there. And it's those two things that came together, I guess, is like strength and conditioning and working with, quality athletes and having some massive success there, and realizing a lot of athletes are being massively shortchanged in their careers and their earning potential, the pain that they're going through, the drug cascade that you go down when you're on pain medications and you're overtrained and inflammatories and how that affects your immune system, and then antibiotics, and then, that coming around to sleep quality and then sleepers. And it's like a nasty, thing that's going on there. So I wanted to have an impact on that athletic world, like help guys to have a better experience of that. And I was doing pretty well with that. The other side to Real Movement is like through my 20s, I spent most of my time in Latin America. I spent for like 3 years there. I had a year in the outback of Australia, but and a year in England, a few months in Germany, and traveling around Europe. Mostly my 20s, once I escaped from university, it was about like exploring the world and figuring out what I was going to do in the world. And it came from a point of rejecting the system of, get a job, pay a mortgage, be a slave to all that stuff. Like I never wanted to have a job. I never wanted to, be inside of that system. So I started buying shares and stuff when I like had no money. I was 19, 20. I was earning like $20 an hour, and I was, funneling money away so that I would never be in the rat race. So I'd never have to do what I didn't want to do just to pay the bills. So I always had that mentality from pretty early on, and it's probably like some of the experiences my parents had. Like I never wanted to be in those situations, like some of the challenges that they'd had. So that in my 20s, that was what I was doing. It's like getting out, exploring the world. How does this thing work? What's going on here politically? Like why are there these poor countries, and why is there this extreme poverty, and what does that actually look like face to face? So I lived in an orphanage in Guatemala for a few months with kids that some of their parents had been assassinated, some of the kids had been abandoned. Like the nasty side of what the reality of Earth is at the moment. And then traveled through Latin America, hitchhiking and couch surfing and just being at the whim of the world. And during that time, like I really did make a vow of like, I'm gonna make an impact on this stuff. Like I want to do something about this. I can see these people, they have as much potential as anyone, that I see anywhere. Like they can do great things. Why is the system not created to harness that? Like why are they not experiencing that? Like, and I feel as though when you experience and when you express your own gifts, that's the biggest joy of life, and doing that collectively, being part of something that you value and expressing gifts like that, I think is the essence of a good life. And then you build everything around being able to do that. So you build your nutrition, your sleep, you travel, your education, and what you're exposing yourself to day in, day out. And that's what I wanted, that's what I want to do with my life. So that's what I do with myself, and I share that with other people. Like that's Real Movement. And I guess the coaches that I work with, they have the opportunity to live in the way that I do. They have the opportunity to cultivate themselves as their job, and to pass on the best of what they can do with themselves and what they learn with us and with the whole world of education that's out there, you know, pass that on for a living. But it's always, I guess, been, how are these, like, how is it actually eventually, how's it going to link back to the part of the world that is not being exposed to as much of this, you know, like Bob Proctor's not going in and presenting in La Paz. You know, there's no massive influx of CrossFit in, you know, Botswana or Bangladesh, or, you know, the economic reality is that the good stuff is only going to where people can afford it. And I don't really agree with that. I do believe in merit. You know, I'm not like a full socialist of, like, you know, or communist where everyone should have the same of everything, regardless of doing work. I don't think that would work either. But I really feel as though people like you and me, and there's a lot of people out there like us who would love to dedicate their lives to helping other people live better and living better in the process. And that's what I want to do with Real Movement. That's what it was created for, to first of all help you, like help the individual, help myself, you know, this guy who doesn't really know how to live with himself because all the, you know, the battles that go on in the brain and self-image and the economic reality of life and this stuff. How do we firstly go through that journey, and then, you know, not firstly, but even in conjunction, because it's not going to be finished. And that's probably something that you feel. It's definitely something that I feel as well. Like, one of the most common things people say, oh, I've got imposter syndrome. Like, I just don't have the confidence to lead because, you know, I know that I'm not perfect myself. And it's like, you know, that day is not going to come. You know, like, you'll get better as you have more responsibility and as you lead more, and your ability to respond, your responsibility is going to increase as you take on responsibility. You know what I mean? So it's not about jumping in and taking responsibility for thousands of people when you're really in a bad spot yourself. But by trying to help one person, you probably straighten yourself out a little bit more. And you try to help two people and you straighten yourself out a little bit more. And it's like, I'm a huge believer in humans as communal beings. Like, we don't exist in isolation. Just like the cells of the human body, they don't do well in isolation. Well, we're one collective as humanity, and we don't do well in isolation. Like, we need each other, and we need those around us to be healthy as well. So that was another realization. I'm getting pretty deep here, but the realization that we can only really be as healthy as the people around us as well. You know, so I can only truly be free if those around me are free. I can only truly be healthy if those around me are healthy. And as they improve, I'll improve. And as I improve, they'll improve. You know, so taking on that responsibility, like, that's what Real Movement's about. Like, it's 100%. It's about the training and the philosophy and the mental development, the wellness. Like, it's about that. It's also about, like, how can we use that to make a better world? Like, how can we go out there and make a difference in places that people aren't that interested in, and also all through, you know, you're in North America, and there's a few guys over there now, and in Australia, and there's a team in Europe. And I was just mapping out the training system stuff more this morning, like, because I feel as though I probably neglected the need for a shareable kind of viral training system. Like, that's what CrossFit's done really well. Like, they've built like a viral shareable training system where people are gamified through a process, and they fall in love with that process. And as a result, you know, you get 15,000 facilities and you change the world, regardless of the business support and systems behind it. And then, you know, I'm speaking with business guys who are like, it doesn't matter what the product is, if it's sold right, it's going to work, you know. And that's the example kind of F45 and, you know, stuff where it's just like, let's package something up, let's make it pretty, and people are going to go for it. That's what I want to, you know, that's also what I want to solve both of those problems, like an amazing viral training system, gamified training system, together with business, you know, a business system, business support that works so the individual does well. I've worked with hundreds of gyms. I know the challenges, the wins and the challenges of owning a facility. So this is kind of like the rebirth of Real Movement, 2019, 5 years in, it kind of went in different directions. 2017, 18, tried to launch a franchise and things didn't go as planned, called Real You. And so I've kind of took a year almost to regroup, And that's pretty much where it's at now, what the real movement mission is. It hasn't changed too much over the time, but there's probably a little bit more clarity in some of that description, if that's making sense. I don't know what you're hearing there, man.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the end goal is still the same, right? But it's just finding that way to connect and build that community. And I think that's really what I'm seeing is happening is the community starting to build. People are starting to see what's going on, and it's the accountability. I mean, that's what it's been for me is, acting. And I think I've had the most productive month this month than I think I've had in a while. And it's really comes down to acting, doing. Anything that I think about, I've been writing down and I've been acting on it and doing it. And then, kind of reevaluate later. I don't if it goes good or bad, but, I've done it, and I learn from that too, right? Like if it goes good, okay, I learn from that experience. If it goes bad, I learn from that experience probably even more, right?
Yeah.
But just moving into, I guess, I do want to get back into that kind of aspect of the movement project as well, but kind of refocusing a little bit on the physical side of it. You did have an interesting podcast recently. It was kind of short and sweet, but like it really hit home with me, the extinction of the strength and conditioning coach. So I'd like to talk about that a little bit more. As someone, I've been working in the field for a while now, and you can kind of almost go one of two ways when you're in this field. You can go that educational way and, bookworm it, or you can go the holistic way where you pick up your education along the way, but you're searching for people, you're searching for teachers, you're learning, you're gathering, you're becoming a better trainer that way. And like if you wanted to just kind of talk a little bit about that concept of how you're seeing now larger organizations kind of going the more the holistic way because they're not getting what they want from someone who doesn't necessarily know how to do it or walk the walk in a sense, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's pretty clear, like from what I see, what I hear, people who are trying to sort of just follow the government education, the standard education, and then expect a job at the end of it, like just doesn't look like that's going anywhere for many people. If you want to go hard in that line, you still have to, you're going to have to be like a marketing type expert and package things up because you don't really have anything unique to share, so it's just a matter of if you can kind of package it up right, you can get yourself out there. I mean, there is definitely a path there on the academic side, but I feel like it's so limited and stunted. And I mean, my mentors and Charles Poliquin and Paul Chek are probably two of the biggest influences on the training side of things and that holistic philosophy. And those guys haven't waited around for anyone to give them permission to speak the truth, and their truth at least. Like that's the one thing you can. That I would like to guarantee is that, you're going to get something genuine from me. You're going to get my truth, and it's not necessarily the truth, but it's sincere, and I feel as though those guys, by just, speaking their truth, being sincere, following what works, they made a much bigger contribution to the performance world than, pretty much anyone else of the modern time. And Louis Simmons, you could say, has done the same thing. And yeah, he dived deeply into the Russian research, and Poliquin was a massive researcher as well. But they just haven't waited for permission, from anyone else to say, yeah, this is the path forward. They're just gone and got the results. And, I love that about those guys. And I guess that's what I aspire to. Ido Portal is probably the other one. And if we put someone else in those four, I've had the opportunity to work with, great minds in this world. And again, like he kind of blazed a new trail training, together with Gymnastic Bodies, who I also spent a bunch of time with a lot of their crew and went to a bunch of their events and such as well. They blazed a new trail as well into the the bodyweight kind of training world, and it's it's exciting the way it's all gone down. But I feel as though that sets a path for someone who's an aspiring coach right now. It's like, I feel like you got to walk the walk, and if you want to be in a specific sport, like, know everything about that sport. I think Ben Patrick from ATG, we couldn't do this podcast without talking about him, but deep knowledge of basketball is why 80% plus of people in his program, like, they're basketballers. They want to dunk and they want to get over their shitty knees for basketball. And there's a few other people that want to get over their shitty knees for something else. And then there's a few other people who just want to check it out. And they're mostly the Australians, apparently, the ones that don't really fall directly into those categories, are sort of real movement crew and guys that follow along in our audience and such. You just, I think to be really employable, you want to have those great skills. I know, the Sydney Roosters, who I work with at the moment, they're looking at staff options and interns and such. And, even the facilities that I work with, they're like, who have you got who's ready to go? And they want to know performance. They want coaching experience on the ground, and they want performance. Like, if you've got those two things, if you're great with people and you can do the stuff, then you can get the pieces of paper. Like, you can get insured. You can't even really get insured from a degree, or maybe you can in some countries, but I don't think in Australia you can actually get insured after your 3, 4, 5 year degree, $30,000, $50,000. You can't actually get insured off that, to my knowledge. You got to go do the sort of basic government education for another 3, 4, 5 grand. Or you can go through, there's other paths now, and insurance companies are working with people like Real Movement and like F45 and like CrossFit, and insuring independently of those organizations, because even though you've done the university, it doesn't necessarily mean you're actually that good at anything. So it's it is interesting times that we're in, and I feel like if you're just doing your degree and you kind of know your 3 sets of 8, you're in deep water. There's trouble there. There's so many graduates being punched out, and there's so much to learn. You need to get beyond that. If you just calling yourself evidence-based, you're not gonna do shit. Like, you're not gonna get a job. Like, the guys who really do know all the research and pump out research and run their their social media and their websites around evidence-based, and they've established that authority, they can do that. But if you're just running off the back of those guys, I don't see you doing much, like trying to be, this is basically what works. This is an average kind of a program. Like, don't be shooting for that spot, be shooting for best practice, be shooting for something that's unique. And then you might do what Poliquin, Portal, Check, like the names that we actually know. Those other guys, like, they're mostly known for their social medias, and they're pumping out, blogs and stuff like that. Some of them do have good results as well, but they're not usually known as coaches, So that's my take on it anyway. We're all welcome to that.
Well, I guess kind of getting a bit into the next topic too, you can, talk about yourself and some of those other leaders that you're talking about as well, and about, a lot of these concepts and ideas, they come from, exploring all of the disciplines, right? And having that open mind to say, the weight doesn't have to be lifted this way. It can be lifted that way, this way, that way, or that way. And then you can choose what you think is best for your system, right?
Some of those deadlifts you do would turn a few heads.
Yeah. I mean, you can mess about and you can make it, when you start understanding all of the concepts and you see them, it's not black and white, and I think that's where people connect with guys like you and those other leaders, is they start to see, it doesn't have to be just done this way or that way without any deviation.
How do you feel about that? Because you've definitely got that pioneering side to, like, you're breaking some boundaries as well. Like, definitely in a local facility, or, I don't know too much yet of your story, who you've worked with, etc. But I'm sure you're turning a lot of heads as well. Like, what are people, how do you do with that?
I work in the military, so
Yeah.
so military setting, fitness setting it can be uptight, and but I will say what I do appreciate about them is that they are always looking for the next best thing. So in, I guess, a quieter sort of movement, we've been able to change minds in the military. The military is evolving a lot, and if they know that something works or there's a better result for it that will help them, usually they want to take it on. So like we have done handstand workshops with the military members. We've introduced some more of the, I guess you could say, the hardcore side of flexibility to them.
How's that been? Because obviously you're not going to do a handstand in combat, so.
No, but we present it differently, right?
Yeah.
They're a tactical athlete. So you present it to them in that scenario where a tactical athlete needs to be multidisciplinary. A tactical athlete needs to be able to have control over their body in that so many ways. They need to be able to train in austere environments. You know, you're deployed in Kuwait and you're in the middle of nowhere. A handstand is going to do you well, or knowing some background about it, right? And even juggling, you know, that's been my big thing lately, is like really connecting with the juggling side of it and the mental aspect of that game, you know. So it really comes around to the multidisciplinary approach.
Yeah.
And
I think it is easy enough to help a lot of people to understand how a handstand could be useful to a combat athlete. It's even easier with rugby league, but, you know, I copped, you know, pushback and people, like, not from the players, but from, you know, people at a distance, you know, criticize and ridicule. For me, yeah, like it's easy to make the case if you're looking at the whole athlete, if you're looking at the mental side as well as the physical side, then it's easy to make a case for handstands. You know how uncomfortable they feel when you first do them if you haven't done them in your whole life, or if you haven't done them, you know, since you're a little kid.
Yeah.
Then yeah, like there's heaps of stuff there around dealing with stress and controlling your breath and the body awareness, the spatial awareness. You know, like it's not a hard sell. But if you've never done it and you don't, you know, you can't do it, then you won't really understand, you know, and the discipline of being able to get to a static handstand. You know, on your Instagram today, you got your handstands on there. To be able to do what you've done today on your Instagram, you know, it's a 6, 12, 18-month journey, you know, depending on where you're starting from.
Yeah.
That's, you know, that's something that, you know, and the thing is, the tactical athletes and the rugby league players, they actually understand that. Like, they get it that this guy's done some work. Like, this guy's a ninja. This guy can do all this shit.
Yeah.
Even if I don't want to do this shit, I understand, like, this guy knows how to go at things. He knows how to persist. Like, this is someone I'm listening to. You know, like, it's a badge in itself. And you don't really get that with bench press and squats to the same extent, because there are shortcuts, you know, with steroids and stuff. And it's not the same badge of honor of discipline and persistence, because you can pick it up and put it down. And, you know, where handstands and juggling, those sorts of things, like when you stop, it deteriorates. And, you know, to get to a high level, you really have to persist with it. It is true with the barbell, but it's different. The skill side of it makes it a different game. So I think coaches who haven't been through that are just missing so much. You know, they're missing so much that they just don't know what they're missing, and then they're not going to be able to impact that sport in the same way as if they actually pursue new skills and go through that again of what it is to pick up new skills. You might have a background of being a basketballer or a background of being an American football player, but because you've done that since a kid, you still don't really get it. You know, when you get it again when you're learning that new stuff. So that's why we always have new stuff. You know, they're picking up new things. And with the juggling, with the foot bag, you're never finished. With the handstand, you're never finished. There's no end point. So you're always a beginner, and you're always dealing with some of that frustration of, can't do this. Will I ever be able to do this? Am I training consistently enough to do this? Am I training so much that I hurt myself? you know, so you're constantly in those games that the pro athlete or the, you know, the combat professional is, you know, going to be dealing with. So,
yeah. I find if you can get a person to recognize what's required to hold a nice handstand shape, well, then you can sell them on the health benefits of learning what that requires. You know, shoulder mobility, the trunk awareness. There's just a lower body flexibility involved. Like all of a sudden, you've now sold someone on improving their shoulder mobility, improving their lower body mobility because they want a handstand.
Body composition. If you're obese, there's no handstand.
Yeah.
You know? And a lot of people aren't motivated to get on a treadmill and get on a diet, you know, calorie restrict and get on a treadmill. That's the dominant voice of our time. Eat less, move more. Doesn't work. If that person's like, if you stick with me, if you do what I say for the next 18 months, 24 months, you will do a static handstand for a minute in the middle of this room. Yeah. And that's something that someone could buy into. That's something that someone could fall in love with to the point where they love that more than they love donuts. They love that more than they love pizza. They don't actually love a lot of that stuff. They just hate something about themselves. Like there's an issue with self-image in there and, you know, trading that. But you got to fall in love with something. And that's what CrossFit has done. Like people love it. People love Ido Portal. You know, there has to be that element of like, I love this stuff, you know, and I love what I do. Like there are better days when I juggle and I do handstands and such. But to be honest, when real movement fell down a bit and I didn't really know exactly where I wanted to take it, my handstands and juggling and everything went away as well. You know what I mean? Like, because without the community and without that, you know, that virality, you know, shareability of it, like it deteriorates as well. So it's always going to need to be in community. And I think people who just are following along in life on Instagram and aren't actually part of anything, you're not going to get anywhere near the results that you could get. Like there are the disciplined few who can sort of play the game on their own and take themselves somewhere on their own. But I don't believe anyone gets anywhere near as far as they could go on their own. Like Ido Portal has Adelia as his training partner, and they've trained together for a long, long time. And they put massive hours in day after day. And that's how it goes down. You know, like you got to get around people who are going to be challenging you. And the good thing is I can live out in the country right now and still be connected. But to be honest, like we're moving off the farm because I want to spend more time with people, you know, like yourself and all the coaches and athletes that we're working with around the world. Like I know by not having this paradise that I always dreamed of, I'll go and spend more time with, you know, other people and I'll learn a lot more in that process. You know, I know as soon as I hang around with you, my side split's going to improve. Like that's learning by osmosis. It's just the way it goes because you've gone further on that journey than I have. You know more about it. You've embodied it. Even if I theoretically kind of know more than you or everything that you know, I don't know it practically, and therefore your words are going to hold more power, and I'm going to change as a result of our spending time together, you know, when that comes about. So that's a huge aspect of it as well.
So in that umbrella of disciplinary, like multidisciplinary approach, let's kind of just go through like some of your favorite ones here, like that you've really found to be, because that's what happens too, right? Like even, you know, back in January, I started powerlifting again, but I was like, there's a way of blending this stuff up, right? And I hadn't done it yet, and that's what I've been enjoying about following you recently, and everything is we're finding a way to blend these things, and my handstand game is gone up a level. When last year all I was doing was handstands, but now I'm lifting again. I'm doing handstands. I'm doing bench, you know, juggling, doing my splits, all this stuff. So, can you break down like your favorite disciplines? Kind of just talk a little bit about them.
I've kind of just distilled it down to skill and force. Like that's really the two things, or even skill and strength.
Yeah. So
the skills, and you might feel like mobility is getting shafted there, but it's not. The skills, the main skills that we work on are handstands, hand juggling, foot juggling, like balancing on the feet as well, skipping and weightlifting. They're like our core skills. So weightlifting as a skill, in that until you load it very heavily, it's not a strength exercise. When you're working with, less than 30-40% of your maximal for that lift, then it's a skill. It's a positions and it's movement execution. It's a form of dance. Like that's really what it is. You're just dancing that same pattern over and over again until you get to a point where you can load it heavily, and then it's a transition between being more of a skill to being more strength. And the strength is a skill, quote is a great one as well. Like strength is a skill, and so it's all skill in a way. But if we're talking then about strength, like I love the base lifts. I do feel as though if your goal isn't to compete in powerlifting, you should do very little of the straight lifts if you're set up right. You can, but I think there are better variations of the squat, bench, dead. I think you should mostly be using deficit deadlifts, some rack pulls, banded deadlifts. Those kind of variations have more carryover for athletic performance and other things that we might go after. They have other benefits.
You can deadlift more too, right? Like more frequently. You don't have to worry about that CNS burnout as much.
If you're changing the patterns, you're going to have you're going to continue to have that skill development. Like I'm a big believer in Louis Simmons and Charles Poliquin as well. They used exercise variation in a way that made a lot of sense and that prevents plateauing. The other side of the equation is having the consistency to just nail down the patterns. And I guess, that's kind of what CrossFit's done to a large extent. That's kind of where Ben Patrick's going. And, guys like Menno Henselmans, and there's some guys like pretty much choose their movements and they just stick with those movements and get crazy strong in those movements. Like the Strong First, I guess, has that kind of philosophy to a large extent as well. The Pavel Tsatsouline, just choose a few movements, get crazy strong at those, and you'll be good to go. That's also true. So there is that dichotomy of things, but the variation of cambered bar, bench press, doing more of your presses, behind the neck press and standing press and that sort of stuff as well. Like, so when you're talking about those core lifts, like they definitely still have their place, but the variations on them, using chains more often than not on the back squats, using the cyclist squat and the board for your back squats and your front squats to put it on more of a quad emphasis. I'm a fan of those tweaks, but there's still that heavy barbell stuff has its place. Weightlifting, I'm a huge fan of. Firstly, as a skill, earn the right, and then as a strength exercise. And funnily enough, rather than bash CrossFit on this, I would say what CrossFit does is it actually does treat it more as a skill because it's not maximally loaded and you actually just practice and get a lot of repetitions. So if it's done right, then I am a fan of the high rep weightlifting. It just needs to be, load needs to be appropriate and the fatigue level needs to be appropriate, that things are being done well. But the first person to 10,000 reps is likely to be the better lifter. Of course, the quality and the coaching makes a difference with that. But if one person gets to 10,000 reps in a year and the other person gets there in 10 years, I'm backing the person who got there in 1 year to be the better lifter at 1 year. If the other person's only up to 1,000 lifts. So we've covered the skills inside of the strength. That stuff is the foundation. I'm a huge fan of strongman training as well. And you might be like, well, how could this ever be part of one system? But CrossFit has proven that it's not hard. It's just a question of programming, and it's a question of kind of setting the intention. Like the real movement belts set the intention. We have the real movement decathlon, 10 events, and I'm building this stuff. I'm playing with this stuff. Honestly, it's not all set in stone, but it's when that's what you work towards. Like CrossFit has proven you can have it all in the game, and I don't believe that we need to be spending as much time on energy systems as they do. I don't really enjoy that. I don't believe in that as much. I believe more in skills, and the high end mobility stuff that you're doing, like that excites me a lot more than sweating as much as I can, most days.
And I think that is probably the missing attribute to CrossFit is that flexibility, mobility. You know, how are they going to be able to fit that in with such high endurance work, right? Like,
I think they would have it. It's just not in their philosophy. Like, I think they can. It's just not what they do. They do the Kelly Starrett type stuff, and that just doesn't create the kind of gains that you have. You know, like, you know, he's made a good contribution to the world, and you know, people love him. He's good. He's a smart guy. There's a better way to do mobility. Like, why don't we do it the better way? You know, like that's and also the skill side for me as well. Like, if you're going to be the ultimate athlete and etc., yeah, you can be the fittest athlete, but if you take up CrossFit without having done a bunch of sports, you're actually going to be a really uncoordinated person. Like you're not going to have, and I've tested this, you're not going to have hand coordination and foot coordination. So which sports, you know, which team sports or which good sports can you do without having hand coordination and foot coordination? Like how much of an athlete are you really if you don't have your hands connected to your brain and your feet connected to your brain, you know? So, I mean, that's like, they can play their game. They're doing something amazing. I'm a big fan of it. I would like to, you know, to see a lot more, you know, go to a lot more CrossFit boxes and spend a lot more time with CrossFit coaches. Like there's so much good stuff there. I guess it's just not what I want to do, you know, day in, day out. But I feel as though there is such a big synergy between Real Movement and CrossFit that, you know, like that will be fun to explore. So I don't want to, you know, be overly critical of it. It's just, I guess those limitations are things that I really value. Like I love skill development. I love the persistence that's required to get that, you know, get that 60-second handstand to do, you know, those freestanding handstand push-ups. And there's so many guys in CrossFit who could do a bunch of freestanding handstand push-ups. They could get to doing a bunch of one-arm chin-ups. They, you know, they would have phenomenal mobility and skills and such. They just haven't been set the task of doing that. Yeah. You know, so that's what I would like to do.
Learn.
The work ethic is there that they could get it done. I have no doubt about that. You know, and that's something that you can't doubt about CrossFit and the tenacity and application that they have in that world. Like that's the to be done. Like, can we inspire people to go down this path? You know, the path that I'm going. I'm not the, you know, the strongest guy, the smartest guy, the prettiest guy. It's not going to be all about me making that happen, but maybe we can collectively show people, well, this is a different way to do it. It feels like this. It doesn't feel like CrossFit. You know, maybe if you don't deal that well with super high volume, high stress training, and you just don't want to do that, then, you know, this is an alternative, you know. And that's I guess part of my frustration at the moment is I feel as though there's no alternative for micro gym owners. So the micro gym owner is on their own in the world and they're doing it tough. Whether they're, you know, some of them are winning financially, most of them aren't. And they're kind of being preyed upon by a lot of different business coaching that maybe helps them get more leads, but they just don't have a viral training system. And then they're battling against CrossFit and F45 that have a viral training system or, you know, powerful business systems and brand awareness. Like, there's not that many new burger joints popping up. You know, I don't see new burger joints popping up. That market is done with the big brands. You know what I mean? And I think that's happening in gyms and in fitness, and the revolution is not being televised. Like, people haven't taken stock of that yet. I feel as though, you know, we can offer an alternative and another pathway for those, you know, for those micro gym owners, but also for the consumer, because it's a tough situation for the consumer as well. Like, someone's out there, they're like, yep, I don't like, when I look in the mirror, I don't like that thing. When I think about myself, I don't feel proud. What's the alternative? Like, what's the option? And so I want to give them that option of, well, this is one alternative. This is a holistic system. It's built around instilling a growth mindset, instilling confidence, getting your work done in a quality way, by keeping your heart connected, keeping your brain under control, dealing with stress. Like, I would love that to be an option for people everywhere in the world. You know, it is an option for people in some cities, but they wouldn't necessarily know that it's there because they're kind of all branded differently. You have to go to realmovement.com and you can look through, you know, who we've worked with in the past and who we work with now. But I'd love that to be available, you know, to the world. So I don't know if I finished that answer, but that's the sort of, and then the assistance work, it needs to follow more along the structural balance type guidelines. Okay. So we're still doing isolation exercises. The functional strength thing has gone too far. You can't actually get really good at CrossFit by following CrossFit. You have to, break away from that and engage with structural balance and engage with, Louis Simmons type principles of how you get strong in powerlifting. And the vast majority of the CrossFit world has realized that as well. So yeah, this is where the ATG type, resilience training that fits in within this system as well. And that's really a lot of the underpinning of, like, you need to get that stuff done to a decent level before you can, get too excited about barbells. And for sure, like a lot of coaches and facilities are mis-sequencing this stuff, and it just slows the rate of progression, because if there is no seated good morning, if there is no split squat, then the back squat is likely to look like something that no one should be doing. We can't be proud of, and you don't want your clients doing things you can't be proud of. So you just need a better system that takes them along the path, and that path. But I would love that path to go all the way, to snatching, over body weight, 1.3 times body weight. Like that's, I love that, but I love also that it's ultimately scalable, it's a system for young people and old people as much as it is for, people of our age and strength enthusiasts. Like, it's very, very scalable, and that's what excites me about it. The question is just, can we connect with coaches who get it and can see that it's a path forward for them business-wise. It's a path forward for them to be able to have staff. That's a huge problem that gyms have. Like, they can't grow because they can't get staff. So that's why you come up with a dumb training system, or you just don't care about the quality of the product. One of those big brands that I spoke about just came up with a dumb training system, so they don't have to train their staff. It's just like an online library or whatever. They don't actually do anything. And the other one, just doesn't take any responsibility for what goes on in their facilities. So, but then the quality gym owners, the micro gym that want to grow and that want to have more members, or that want to have a second facility, they just can't, because there aren't coaches out there who do the work. So if we can create this system that feeds coaches into those two things, like, there's something special that can be done there. So the breathing is also there inside the Real Movement training system, but mostly you can see it all within the belts and within the decathlon, like kind of where we're going with it.
So the French powerlifting ratio, that's one of the belts that, like, I'm an old powerlifter, so, like, I was like, what? French powerlifting? I've never heard of that. So, I was investigating it a bit there, and I got excited because I was like,
did you find it?
Yeah, I was like, this will keep powerlifting in my life at a maintainable level. Yeah. It excited me because I was like, I can work on my French powerlifting ratio and it won't affect my other training modalities, right? So, so just correct me if I'm wrong. So it's in 1 minute, you have to hit your submaximal high bar squat, like below 90, narrow grip bench. It's inside the rings, right?
Yeah.
Inside the ring, so it's narrow grip bench, and it's a conventional deadlift. Yeah, so in 60 seconds, you have to complete all three.
Correct, yeah. And the idea is, it's not so much, like, I wouldn't say sub-maximal, but it's like, you don't want to shit the bed. Like, they need to be quality reps that you're proud of.
Right.
It's not, and I guess that's highly subjective, but we don't want to see these, 4, 5, 6 second grinding reps. And especially when you're putting 3 reps inside a minute, that doesn't really make any sense. But, the idea is more like, gauge where you're at, and it's like, 90, 95% of what you'd get on a proper powerlifting total. If you, or at least not powerlifting total, but, if you were to do those same exercises in more of a powerlifting contest type format, you know what I mean? So by compressing it down a little bit and simplifying it and taking a little bit of pressure on what the number is, you can just get it done. And it's quite a simple thing to include in programming. And we've had some fun days where, everybody gets their French powerlifting total within sort of an hour. you know, between warm-ups and changing bars, and this guy goes, that guy goes.
Yeah,
it's a lot of fun. You know, you watch the person go through it. You know, personally, putting a whole day into it, you know, like that's, I think that's for someone who wants to be a hardcore powerlifter, it's sacrilege and it's no good. But for anyone who doesn't really want to compete in powerlifting, but wants to have some big lifts and wants to stay accountable to that, you know, I think it's,
well, there's
it's a lot of fun.
Definitely a performance element to that, right? You know, bang, 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 each lift. No, that's super cool. So you take your total and then you divide your total into your body weight. Is that what it was?
Yeah, exactly.
Get that ratio. So then there are levels that are like, you know, beginner, intermediate, advanced. So some nice targets there. I'm going to start recommending that to my old powerlifting friends that aren't powerlifting anymore, you know. Oh, here's something we can still do, right? So no, that's very cool, man. So
and obviously a bigger fan of the high bar, you know, of the high bar, back squat. Like bench press, like, you know, I can take it or leave it. It's kind of a partial movement anyway, but squats, I really feel like it's a butchering of the squat, the powerlifting squat. Like, it's strong, but it just doesn't interest me. You know, the powerlifting squat all wrapped up, you know, just breaking the parallel, etc. Like, the knees, you know, as the knees over toes, you know, all this stuff. Like, it's just such a nice feeling to be able to get, you know, all the way to that bottom position and stand it back up, and obviously then you get that transfer over to your, you know, your weightlifting as well. So that's probably the biggest adjustment.
That becomes your mobility work when you can do it that way, right? You express your strength through full range of mobility, and that's you know, you don't have to be wrapping bands all over your body. And
we need to do that. We need to do that at every joint. You know, we've done that with squats to a large extent now. You know, like CrossFitters can sit in a deep squat. When I started running workshops and I'd said like squat, everybody squat, people couldn't sit on their heels. You know, between Ido Portal and CrossFit, now people can sit on their heels. And, you know, I guess Ben's like putting the final nail in the coffin of like deep squatting being bad for you, but every other joint in the body hasn't really been addressed yet.
Right.
You know, so that's some of the work that needs to be done as well. And Jeff and guys like yourself, like, you know, Emmett, these guys, like, you guys are putting that out there as well. And again, like, you know, even the FRC stuff, like, I don't know, like, I feel like it's a fetish. If you don't put strength with it, it's like some kind of weird, like, you just train mobility. Like, what do you know, like, for me, it's like unfathomable that would be a thing. And I think, you know, you kind of get, you know, like, you know that as well. Like, you don't really want to just be a mobility guy. Like, it kind of makes sense as a niching product type thing, but in terms of like a human experience, it becomes quite unbalanced if you're like super skinny and you can get into all these positions. Like, I guess it's yoga and, you know, happy days if that's what you love. But you know, for me, it's like, well, talk to me like when because you've done this, and you and Jeff, you know, Jeff's in the same battle. I think like Jeff loves lifting, but he's the flexi bull. But when you know, you do stiffen up, right? When you go after those powerlifting and you do those, you know, those hard sessions, like, how do you find gaining flexibility at the same time as, you know, training hard in strength versus maintaining flexibility at the same time as like doing a hard strength block? Like, what's your take on that stuff?
Well, my journey in flexibility was kind of giving up the lifting for a while.
Yeah, I think it's easier to make the big gains with that, right?
And I didn't even think I was going to come back to it, but I mean, I got to that point where the human experience, I wanted to lift again. I had to go back to it. I became more flexible, and I guess what's been cool about it now, though, is that I don't have to do much in the flexibility side of things.
Yeah.
So I hit my lower body strength elements, and I finish off with some mainly active flexibility work, and then just a little bit of passive stuff throughout the week to warm up or to cool down. And so that's been a cool kind of realization, and this getting back into lifting and, you know, getting back into all these, you know, elements of training is seeing what that time did. So yeah, I would say some focused time needs to be put into creating range, right? So you can't strengthen a range you don't have. So it just depends on how much time you're willing to put into getting that range or to earn that range before you, you know.
Yeah. You do a lot of the static work as well. Is that because I know Jeff's a friend or fan of Kip Lachlan as well, and like some of the, you know, more yin.
I don't as much. I do prescribe it for
Yeah.
someone that needs to get their range. I don't as much anymore, but I did a lot of static hold work, because I mean, a stretch itself, it's not a stretch until you've held that position for a certain amount of time. The body, the cells need to know what's happening to make change, and like, you know yourself, like, you're not stretching unless you're not moving. Right? So I mean, you could be moving through the range, but then when you hold that stretch, it's about being static and not moving and holding that stretch. And that's sometimes the one thing you just need to teach people is don't move, stay there, right? And they can't not move. It's just teaching, like, you have to hold that position.
But I guess it's something that I was chatting with Ben about recently. Like, it's always loaded, right? Because if you're leaning into it, like, if it's not loaded, there's no stretch. You know what I mean? Like, and then it's just degree of load. Like, it might be external loaded is probably a better way to say, but every stretch is kind of loaded, right? Like, you're always trying to leverage some body weight or whatever into a position, and then you can take that further with external loads. And so it's like a continuum.
Yeah, and that's why you would be looking at maybe, getting rid of that stretch if you're not feeling it, because you're not loading the stretch. It's not doing anything for you. It may just help you cool down and breathe a little better, but once you've met a range and a stretch where you're not loading it, let's go on to the next thing, right? Just tying in here, I don't want to keep you too long, man, because I could go for hours. And
I need to do one. I get you on a podcast so I can ask you all the questions.
People will stop listening to a certain point if we keep going. But can you, you've been talking a lot about the metaphysical side of training and the metaphysical side. Can you touch on that more? I'm trying to get into it more myself and read up more about it as you talk about it. But can you just kind of talk a little bit more about that and your take on it?
Yeah. It sounds quite mystical because, you know, metaphysics is kind of the world of mystics. The reality is that you can't separate it. You can't separate the psychological experience from the physical experience. So what people love about whatever kind of training they do is how it makes them feel. You know, like, you kind of want the result, but it's how you feel, you know, going through it. So why don't you just give yourself that feeling right off the bat? You know, why don't you give yourself that feeling every time you train? You know, give yourself that PB feeling every time you train. Give yourself that high self-worth whenever you train, and like, learn to lock in the feeling of, you know, I'm gifted, I'm great, I love, you know, what I've been given the opportunity to do here. Lock that feeling in and hold that feeling under pressure, under stress, under the handstand. You know, when things are getting tough, the more you're able to lock in those kind of emotions, the more you're going to hold heart rate variability in a healthy place, and that's going to improve your recovery. That's going to improve, you know, your sex hormone profile. The physiology is very clear. If we just sit here and piss ourselves laughing for a period of time and then measure gene regulation, there's a change in the genes through that, right? So there's always this psycho effect, you know, like there's it affects our immune system, it affects all our hormones. So we want to actually be more conscious of that effect. Like, every training system is impacting this, but just most of them don't address it. They don't speak about it, whether they just don't have awareness of it or whatever. But we actually want to leverage this. Like, when you juggle, you wire a new pattern into your brain, and from 1 minute to the next, you can see that your brain is now different and now wired differently to what it was a minute before. And I can show you this, and then I could show you again, and then I can show you again. Every time I introduce a new drill to you, within 1 minute, you go from not, and someone listening to this at home, like throw the ball from behind your back and then catch it in the same hand. Throw it behind the back and then catch it in the same hand to the front. Within a minute, your attempts will get hugely better. So if you don't like the way that you think, if you don't like the way that, your level of knowledge around a certain topic, look how changeable you are, And so take that message from your training. And then take the message of mastery. So that's beginner tasks. But then mastery, I want to hit that 100 5-ball today. That's the intention, is 100 throws of 5-ball today. That's a mastery task, and that's something that takes a long time, and your ability to keep going back to something and make small shifts and make small improvements. Yes, you get that with your bicep curls and your bench press, but it doesn't lock into the same extent as the juggling, which you can practice almost as much as you want to. You do feel neurological fatigue as well when you juggle really, for a significant period of time, or you're taking on new drills or like the 5-ball and stuff. If I've done hard arms and upper body session as well, like my biceps pump when I do 5-ball juggling. Like my balls aren't that light, and like I literally like get lactic in the arms. So yeah, but while you're juggling, don't be scattered and don't be stressed and don't be all over the place. Control your breathing, breathe through your nose, like do your heart math work as a foundation that you know how to lock good energy into your heart, and then hold that while you juggle. And hold that while you handstand. And if you can do it then, and if you can practice it through challenging tasks, then it's likely we're going to have more access to that through the day. And that's really what this is about. Like, ultimately, Lucas, like we've both been really honest about this. Like, you want your training to make you feel really good. And that doesn't mean it's not hard. It doesn't mean it doesn't challenge you and hurt to an extent. Like, there's going to be some sensation. There's going to be challenge. It's not all going to be easy. But you want to take it out of that stuff that helps you be a great father, a great business person, someone worth having a conversation with, and, worth traveling to the other side of the world to see. Like, that's what you want your training to help you to become. And 9 out of 10 people that I speak to who join Real Movement, the biggest thing, whether they're conscious of it or not, most of them are conscious of it, is confidence. Like, they have no confidence in themselves. They don't have self-belief. Where does confidence, self-belief come from? It comes from doing the thing. Like, move towards it, do the thing, have the power. So as you start to do the thing, you start to be able to believe in yourself. And when you do all these things that were impossible to you, like I've done back somersaults on the ground as well. There was something that was so far out of the realm of possibility for me. And someone who can do it thinks, well, that's no big deal. But when you're a 30-year-old guy and you've never done that before and it scares the hell out of you, it's a huge adrenaline dump, etc. This is what we do systemized day in, day out. We take people so they look in the mirror and they see the physique that they want to see. Like, I know how to get people really lean. I know how to put muscle mass on people. Like, at the foundation, you're going to look good. You're going to be able to do things that the majority of society can't do. And some people are going to be like, well, why does this guy want to do the splits? Like, some people have a feminine association with the splits, right? Like, they'll throw stones of like, oh, you're trying to be a girl. Well, no, I'm not trying to be a girl. I'm doing the splits, but when you can do all sorts of things that other people are unable to do, when you have something to teach any person that you come across anywhere in the world, like, you have a game you can play with that person. If they're willing to play, you can take them to a new place. Like, that's what you want. You want to be able to, go on that metaphysical journey, take people on that metaphysical journey. I love the tools that we have to do that. And I value the tools as tools. I love that they actually do improve sporting performance. When you can juggle, when you can foot juggle, like, you will be a better athlete in whatever sport, in hockey, football, whatever. Like, I 100% believe it. I've seen it. It works. Like, there's a lot of people a lot smarter than me who also, stand by these kind of techniques. But we want to take that bigger transformation out of it. Like, ultimately, if there's a lesson from the podcast, it's like, take the bigger transformation that comes out of doing the work with this, with doing the work with your food, with doing the work with your training. Otherwise, it becomes very mechanical, and it's no fun in the mechanical. If you're like obsessed with getting your biohacking process together and getting your diet right and getting your training right, if you don't engage the spirit with that, I guarantee you it will be empty. You will do all the shit. You will eat the gluten-free. You will do all the stuff. And I agree with that. But if you don't engage the spirit with it, there is no joy in it, and there's no reward in it, and it doesn't even work to the same extent. You need to engage that placebo, and the placebo is, I believe in this, I love this, I'm worthy of this, this is getting better, this is a joyful process. You know, that's what it needs to be. That's what I love about what we do, and that's probably the difference between a lot of successful, you know, coaches and training facilities. If you're clear about it, like the best coaches, they give the best placebos. They give the most powerful placebos. Charles Poliquin, whatever he told you, that was the truth. Ido Portal, whatever he tells you, that's the truth. Coach Summer, you know, you listen to him on Tim Ferriss, like he can speak someone into a different existence, you know, and Joe Dispenza is conscious of how that works. And he explains the process for the brain, for the hormones, for the cells, like, you know, neurologically what's going on. But these guys are all kind of, in a way, it's, you know, like it's either white magic or black magic. You're either doing it to push people in a hole or you're doing it to take them to the heavens, you know? So we need to be these white magicians, I guess, for want of a better term, or light magicians, you know, light workers. When you show people that capacity within their physical being, you transform who they are. But I do believe it's important to be conscious that it's not just, oh, like, let's juggle. Like, people don't get that to the same extent. You can start like that, but gradually it's more valuable if they understand, you know, this is you. This is what you can do with everything. You know, this is how the universe works. Like,
yeah, that's awesome, man. I have like a list of things. I might have to do a second episode with you. Talk about more.
Try and do a few quick ones if you want to wrap it up. I don't want to leave you feeling like
Well, I did want to just kind of touch on the carnivore diet. I haven't experienced the carnivore diet. I haven't dove, I guess, I don't know how deep that journey is, but it looks intense. I've been using intermittent fasting for some years now, and I just wanted to hear, like, I'm obviously connecting with you more now, so I'm starting to look into the carnivore diet more because, you know, it's like, okay, Keegan follows this, and I want to take a look into what this is all about. And can you just give me some information about your experience with the carnivore diet, and are you still doing it?
Yeah, like, so not as a religion, but as a foundation. So I would say, like, to take from the vegan world, it's like a meat-based diet, you know, where that's the large part of the foundation. Not to try and be funny or anything, but it's like, you know, 90% of my diet would be, you know, animal product based and primarily meat. Actually, fasting and even veganism to an extent is a carnivore diet, because you eat yourself. When you stop eating, your body doesn't stop being fueled. So depending on the length of the fast, depends on how much you're eating yourself and how that's actually going down, like in terms of the hormones, in terms of the inflammatory responses, etc. But that's actually why vegans tend to sometimes feel good in the early phase, is that they're actually following a carnivore diet. Like, they're eating themselves and they feel good living on red meat and living on fat, you know? So they're living on themselves, and that can feel good for people for a period of time. The other reason sometimes is because they're on a constant kind of sugar high, and the sugar can make you feel good. But then both of those things lead to a depletion after a period of time. And once the depletion hits, then, you know, it's not so good, or the blood sugar system, you know, becomes damaged, less sensitive. You're getting bigger blood sugar fluctuations, etc. Then, you know, hyperinsulinemia. There's a lot of problems that come on the back of that. I love this stuff, and we could do a full podcast on, you know, I have done full podcasts on this, but, you know, there's a lot of information in the university, you know, Real Movement University around it. And I want to really put together all those resources of where I've drawn the information from. Like, that's something that I'm working on at the moment, of like Real Movement endorsed content. So I've done it for Charles Poliquin, and I'll do it for sort of all the best people in the world, because I have hundreds of teachers that I've learned so much from. And Dr. Kraft is probably the best one when it comes to like blood sugar. Then your Paul Saladino, and you know, there's a lot of guys out there, I guess, talking about the you know, Dr. Sean Baker as well, like the carnivore rabbit hole. And the Peterson case is pretty compelling for it, if you look at Jordan Peterson, Michaela Peterson. But it doesn't have to be all or nothing. I think, like, people, and I do with this as well, like, do a carnivore day when you feel like your gut needs to settle, or you know, just do a carnivore day and see how that feels with heavy training, etc. and be like, oh, okay, like I know when I can use that kind of day again. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be an all or nothing, like I'm never eating anything other than meat ever again.
Right.
There are some people who make that decision. I don't think I'll ever make that decision. Plant foods do pull stuff out of the body. They detoxify. They challenge the body in different ways, and there's probably benefits to that. You know, like some people are very sensitive to those plant chemicals, phytochemicals. 99% of plants or more are poisonous. If you go out and eat them, you get sick straight away. Those other 1%, it's in the dose. If you have too much, you will get sick as well. If you don't have enough, then maybe nothing bad happens. Like that's kind of what we're learning. So it's a very interesting one. I find it's very easy to get lean with that carnivore type approach. It's basically the Gironda approach and even Poliquin to an extent. Like they were massive on red meat. Vince Gironda, steak and eggs for like 9 months, got himself in competition shape, said he started to actually put on muscle, you know, when he was on quite a restricted steak and eggs diet. I think he was having like a small salad once a week or once a day, or I don't know, like, but that's fine as well. Like I don't think, I think it's just the dose and working out the dose for yourself. I do feel as though when I add a bunch of other stuff in, I like sometimes I will feel like a significant dip in mood or energy, but having, you know, bits and pieces of stuff has been fine for me. So people who want to get lean, like look at the neurological, endocrine focused nutrition makes the sense. You know, nutritional endocrinology is what I was looking for. Nutritional endocrinology is like how's the food affecting your hormones, and every food has an impact on all sorts of signaling and hormones within the body. I know you can get results with kind of macro based and prisoner of war type approaches of like, well, if we starve them, they get skinny. Well, yeah, if you starve them, they get skinny, but no one wants to be starved. And if you want to train well, then that's not the path, you know? So, there's so much to go on with about that, Lucas. But
sure.
I encourage people to just research and experiment. Like that's probably the two things that I live by, you know, just continue to know more and then, you know, do it, see what it feels like.
Yeah, maybe I'll try maybe like a day or two just carnivore only and see. Yeah, because it's almost like a 24-hour fast or a 48-hour fast. It's like kind of like a detox kind of, you know, flip the switch again kind of thing. But yeah.
Well, if you do it with just fats, then you get that. If you do it with protein as well, then you create, you know, there is an inflammatory response that happens in the gut to break those proteins down into the amino acids and such. So there's a lot of different subtleties in how you can play with that stuff with, you know, with broth, with fats and different variations of, you know, how much muscle meat and then different kinds of muscle meats and bone marrow. Yeah, there's a lot of conversations around that. Origins of Nutrition is quite a good one to check out. Yeah, he's probably one of the smartest guys in terms of like an anthropological kind of approach to carnivore nutrition. The ancestral approach to carnivore nutrition is how he talks about it. If you can't find him on Instagram and you listen to this and you want me to connect you, like his name's Dom, but he doesn't have his name on there.
I've been connected with him for some time now.
Yeah, he's a really good guy, really nice guy. He's based in Bali at the moment. We keep planning to collaborate on something, but I feel like there's some hectic collaborations about to happen across the Real Movement community. Like there's a few dropping in, you know, obviously with ATG and Scott Wilson, you know, Commonwealth Games weightlifter with a very eclectic approach to training. You know, people like yourself and Dom, and speaking with like one of the smartest, most open-minded powerlifters in the world champion, about contributing as well, you know, with Real Movement.
That Coach Wooden?
Andre Wooden, yeah. In over in Manchester, super smart guy, a funny guy. Just that's what we need to do, you know, just be more connected to people who are super inspiring, who love what they do, who are experimenting, you know, thought experiments, living experiments. And then, you know, there's a lot of great facilities that we're connected to in Australia as well. And I think between it all, there's something really huge coming, and I want that door to be open to everyone. And that's why, you know, you join the Real Movement team. It's a super low level investment, but you kind of start this process where, you know, maybe you end up presenting to all of these coaches and network and contributing in the university. And, you know, I think economically it's going to work out that it can contribute economically to a lot of people's existence as well. And, you know, that's what I'm working for, is great experiences, and obviously having everybody, achieve their financial, goals as well. So I love that side of things as well. So
awesome.
Yeah, it's a good thing. I appreciate the opportunity to come on and speak with you, and hopefully a couple of people who I haven't spoken to before are going to hear this one, and obviously I'll share it out with people who are in my audience. And you're doing great work, man. Like I know that you've been open about going through some of those challenges yourself. Like you can see you coming out the other side as well. Like there's a lot of energy coming from you, and I think we all have the potential to be amazing, to be great, to be inspired, for life to be on fire, and we have the potential for the opposite of that to be true as well. So it's just learning the game of what takes us to this place, and how do we stay there longer. And that's I know for myself, as soon as I stopped doing all the real movement stuff and having these kind of interactions and the accountability, giving that accountability, I stopped having that accountability, and my life became nowhere near as good as what it was either. So. Sure. We just got to be aware of what those games are, and I think just play the games. Like it's makes life better, get better results, help more people, be a better family man.
That's great.
Name of the game.
Thank you, Keegan. Thank you for spending some time with me, man, and I look forward to working more closely with you in the future for sure.
Yeah, looking forward to catching up, spending some time together, face to face, somewhere in the world in the not too distant future.
Awesome.
Cool.
I'm just gonna hit stop on the recording here.